Welcome, class. This is Citations Demystified, and this is Dr. Rosie. Don't stop now. Keep listening and reading along for some enlightenment. We can only hope. To help us with learning citations, I've chosen this article from Psychological Science magazine, journal, written by Craig A. Anderson and Brad J. Bushman. The information that's important here on this slide, this would be the first page of the journal, and the information obviously that would be important would be the title of the article, which is right here, the authors, the name of the journal, the year it was published. This number here would be the volume, and this number is the issue number. And this is the DOI number. APA was moving towards the importance of DOIs, and they have been used, and for our purposes, when we have the next lesson, which will be on creating reference pages, I will show you how to use the DOI number. But for now, let's just worry about citations, one step at a time. This is the first page of the article as it begins. Again, this is the title of the journal up here, the title of the journal article, the authors, and typically in a journal article you'll have in italics before the actual text a summary of what the article is about, and this is always a good place to start when we are researching, to look at the summary to see if it's going to be worthwhile for our research. This article that I chose is a PDF, and the purpose for PDFs, why I prefer PDFs as opposed to HTML, is that the PDF actually shows you the page number the article was on when it was originally published in the journal. And in this particular case, it starts on page 353. Why are those page numbers important? Well, we will need to use them as we create our citations, and we also will need them when we create our reference page. Moving on. The section that I chose to use in this example to help us develop our citations is on page 358. I duplicated that on the bottom. And I chose these two paragraphs. It's under the discussion section of the article. And I am going to be using information from here to develop my citations. Okay, short quotations. The first way we use citations, the first way we use sources in our essays is in short quotations, as I showed with the very first one. This is word for word, these words right here. If you go back to page 358, you will find that Anderson and Bushman actually stated this. So this is how I actually would set up the citation according to Anderson and Bush. You notice that I've put the year that the article was written here. There's a comma, space, and then quotation. You can read the rest of the line. End of the line, quotations, space, parentheses, P, period, which stands for page, and then the actual page number it appeared on. You close the parentheses, and then you put a period. Okay, that is one version, according to. Another version would be Anderson and Bushman, again, the year, found, and the same quotation from the same page number, and then I would put a semicolon here, and I would add something, which is, these are my words now. They're not from the article, and from reading this article and commenting on this particular statement, I'm wondering what implications does it have for parents and teachers, and that's why I put that there. If you notice, when we use the authors in text, we use the word "and" spelled out. Okay, and this is considered the signal phrase, according to Anderson and Bush, 2001, and Anderson and Bush, 2001, found. By the way, whenever we use a word, a verb in our quotations, we always use the past tense. So that's why I use found. If I would have said stated, I wouldn't say state, I would say stated with an ED. So if you don't use a signal phrase, as I have right here, then that would mean that you'd have to put the information at the end. So I would just start out here. The research is stated, exposure is positively linked to aggressive effect and physiological arousal. Again, close the quotation, space, parentheses, Anderson and Bushman. Now you notice here, because it's not a signal phrase and it's not within text, you do not actually have to read it as part of the sentence. You would put the ampersand sign instead of spelling out the word and. Comma, space, the year, comma, space, P, period, and the page, period, and the actual page number. Close the parentheses, comma. And I'm just adding something else that I'm considering and thinking that, but they could not offer a valid explanation. So those are short quotations, okay? Simple so far. I hope I still have you with me. Now, long quotations. Long quotations are when you find information in an article that you feel all of it is important to your paper. Then that would be 40 words plus. You would use no quotation marks. You'd start the quotation on a new line. You indent it 1/2 inch from the left margin, similar to your indents for new paragraphs. You double space it, and the citation should be placed after the punctuation mark. Now here, I did not double space it because I don't have a lot of space. I apologize, but think of this as double spaced. If you noticed here, after the 40 words, I have a period, space, I have no quotation marks because up here we do not use quotation marks for a long quote, and parentheses, Anderson and Bushman again, the ampersand sign, comma, space, 2001, comma, space, P, period, page number 353, you close the parens. No punctuation is needed here. If you were going to continue writing in the same paragraph, you would come down to the next line and start underneath the T, because remember this is indented 1/2 inch. If you were starting, if you were starting in, you would come up over here against your margin, okay, if you were in the same paragraph. If it were a new paragraph that you were starting, you would drop down and line it up underneath here because you have to have the 1/2 inch indent. Okay. If you were summarizing or paraphrasing information from your source, again, I've showed you a sample here. The information that you need is the author or authors and the year of publication for your in-text reference. It is a good idea to include the page number. It's not required, but it's probably best that you do. It's one of those areas that APA doesn't say you must, but you should. So I've showed it to you both ways. First one is according to Anderson and Bushman, again using and because this is a signal phrase or the first part of the sentence. Playing violent video games results in hostile, negative, and antisocial behavior in children and young adults. That's just a summary of a paragraph that I read about in the article, and I've put it in my own words. The second version would be putting the citation after the information, just like I showed you here. Again, this is similar, very similar to the short quotation, but it's just a summary or a paraphrase, and it is in your own words. So no quotation marks are necessary. Okay, so these are just some other points that I've decided that I'm just going to toss in here. If your work doesn't have an author, cite the source by its title in the signal phrase, or use the first word or two in the parentheses. And here's an example right here. Okay, a similar study was done by students learning to format research papers, and since this was a report, a title of an article, it's in quotation marks. If it's a title of a book or a report, this would be italicized or underlined. Since it is the title of an article, we have just put it in quotation marks. Here's a little note about the anonymous. You can use anonymous, but for the most part, we don't use that, but just in case. A work by two authors. Basically, my example was exactly like this, so I'm just repeating it here again. This would be at the end, and this would be as the beginning of the sentence. List all the authors in a signal phrase or parentheses the first time you cite the source. And here would be all the authors the first time. The next time, you would just put the first name, Kernest et al. If you notice, after the et, there is no period. There is only a period after the al, and there's a comma, space, and then the year. Okay. Organization as an author. You can use it the best way as a signal phrase according to the American Psychological Association. And you'd put the year, comma, and then whatever you want to write. And again, if it's something like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, this is how you would set it up. As a citation at the end of a sentence, you'd put Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and then in the other type of brackets, you'd put the actual abbreviation and the year. The second citation then, since the reader now knows what MAD is, you don't have to spell it out. You can just use the acronym, MADD, comma, and the year. The end. Citations Demystified. I hope that this helped and that you are enlightened now. If you have any additional questions, please let me know. I've sort of summarized the top ones that we'll be using, and if there are others that you're not sure of, just give me a call or send me an email. Thanks and have a great day.